Kansas City Chiefs 23, Cincinnati Bengals 20. Working backwards here, the last thing that we saw, the game-winning field goal, of course, by Harrison Butker. But how did we get there? We had the Chiefs with a huge stop against the Bengals. They had the opportunity with about 2:30 left to drive down, get the game-winning field goal. Chiefs make a stop, highlighted by Chris Jones, who had a monster game with the sack on third down. They punt it, get a big punt return from Sky Moore, and then we see Patrick Mahomes on one leg scramble for a first down, which would have been cool. You know, it was a good play. Would have kept the drive alive. There would have been 8 seconds left. There would have been a 57-yard field goal on the table and some strategy to discuss. But Joseph Asai hits him late. 15-yard penalty. It was the right call, man. It wasn't.
Yeah,
they had to make that call, but that is what puts the Chiefs into field goal range for the game winner.
Yeah, like, look, there were plenty of calls and officiating incidents in this game that you can, I think, complain about or debate or talk about. This one was bad. It was blatant. I mean, not bad, a bad call, a bad play that had to be called. I mean, he shoved him like a full yard out of bounds. He's almost over the white line that in the, the sideline of the white line, which is like a yard wide in itself. He's almost all the way over that before Asai gets to him and shoves him in the back. And I mean, I kind of feel sorry for Asai because he was having a great game, was making a really positive impact throughout the course of it. But that is one of the dumbest penalties you're going to see. And that turned what was a long field goal attempt, like high 50s in that weather, is a pretty brutal kick, to what it ended up being a 47-yard shot.
Yeah.
Which ultimately sailed straight down the middle. I mean, that's tough. Like, it's funny because in one way, like, a play in the first quarter is the same as a play in the fourth quarter, but it doesn't work that way because of time, right? You run the further into the game you get, the less time there is to recover from mistakes. So these plays end up becoming compoundly more important when you screw them up. And if you screw them up literally with seconds remaining in the clock, there's no coming back from that. That is literally the mistake that changes that from being potentially going overtime to, oh crap, we just lost because I did something dumb.
Yeah, it was not good. You're right. I mean, there's no coming back from that, right? I mean, it puts the Chiefs into field goal range. All you got after that was they go right out there, kick the field goal with 8 seconds left. All the Bengals had was a desperation opportunity with 3 seconds left to try to lateral it. That falls flat. So Chiefs are off to the Super Bowl. What, third time in 4 years now? Third time in 5 years? 4 years? Whatever it is. They've been there. They won it in 2019. They lost in 2020. Yeah, third time in 4 years. So we got the Kelsey Bowl, and as you mentioned, the 2 number 1 seeds. What a great game, though. So there was definitely some weird officiating stuff. I don't want to harp on that too much because it was a really good back and forth game. But you definitely saw stuff like a 3rd and 9 where we just called a do-over. Just a do-over. Bengals stopped the Chiefs on third down. We're just like, no, do it over. A do-over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fun. Really good stuff.
Yeah, that was weird.
So there's always some officiating stuff to discuss. But like high level here, when you're looking at this game, we talked a ton about Patrick Mahomes and his ankle injury. And it definitely like showed up at times, but he was way more. I mean, it didn't affect him nearly as much as I think we thought it would. I mean, what'd you think of Mahomes, the ankle, and the whole week, coming out playing injured?
I mean, I think certainly early in the game, it would have been pretty difficult to tell that Mahomes was injured if you didn't know. Like, there wasn't a ton of evidence early that he was dealing with anything. I think as the game wore on, it started to become more and more obvious that he was dealing with something. And I don't know if that was a case of, like, the longer you're playing on something like that, the more it shows up, whether it's a case of, like, he claimed that he didn't take a shot of any kind before the game. I have no reason to doubt him, but maybe should have. Like, maybe had he taken a shot later in the game, it might have been less problematic. Also, as the game wore on, like, he sort of made a couple of movements that clearly aggravated it. There was one where he was rolling out to his left, and he did the sort of patented Mahomes, twist around the body, fire the ball back across into the middle of the field. Only this time, like, that clearly did not sit well with the leg, and he was sort of hopping his way at the end of that play. From that point on, maybe that makes it even worse. But I think when you consider the spectrum of what this could have been, like, before the game, we're talking about this is usually a 4 to 6 week injury for people. When that is your sort of baseline or your context, for him to go out there and have the kind of game that he did, I think was really impressive.
It was. I mean, early on, it looked like Mahomes was just going to say, okay, I'm going to win from the pocket. We're going to be patient, take the underneath stuff. And it was working. It worked pretty well early on. There was something like 108 to nothing yard differential in the first quarter. But let's start at the end again. To get to this point here. I love it. You laugh at me every time I say that.
Well, we're starting from the last game first, and now we're starting at the end of the last game to go back.
That's how they do it in the newspapers, right? You work your way backwards to the beginning. We could talk about it any way you want, but I thought Zach Taylor was pushing a lot of the right buttons in this one, right? He declines a penalty to go from 3rd and 22 to 4th and 8. The Chiefs punt, and that was part of what gave the Bengals their opportunity, punting on 4th and 8, put them at the 5-yard line to try to execute a game-winning drive. The Bengals convert a big 3rd and long, but the Chiefs got the stop in the end. I mean, it doesn't matter what part of the game we're talking about. The Bengals offensive line that worked pretty well last week in the snow against Buffalo was not good in this game.
No.
Joe Burrow under constant pressure. He was sacked 4 times on his first 9 dropbacks.
3 consecutive snaps.
Yes. It was just nonstop.
Dropbacks.
Nonstop domination. Chris Jones. And the fascinating thing about Chris Jones and that what ended up being the game, not game sealing sack, but the one that gave the Chiefs the opportunity to win it, was against right tackle Hakeem Adeniji. They saved that, right? We've seen that at other times during the Chiefs season where they saved Chris Jones, put him outside against the right tackle, take advantage of that. But the Chiefs did a great job up front, and the Bengals offensive line just could not pass block today.
Yeah, Jones was winning consistently all the way through the game. Obviously, when he was one-on-one with guys like Sharping or Volson, he was just destroying them. As you said, they kicked him out. He was able to beat Adeniji around the edge as an edge rusher. But also, he was splitting double teams as well. So even the stuff we talked about in terms of, you can take away one guy if that's all you have to worry about. Well, he was beating the double team on those kinds of things. Plus, they were actually getting home with other guys. Like, George Karlaftis, who hasn't really he's got a reasonable number of sacks and a reasonable number of pressures this year as his rookie season. But when you go through his tape, there's almost nothing in the way of impactful, clean, decisive wins. I mean, he was beating Adeniji reasonably easily, reasonably quickly. They were getting pressure. Buffalo's defensive line kind of has to be watching this game and thinking, man, how bad were we? We couldn't do anything against this group. Okay, we got a little bit of joy, but and sure, you can blame the footing and the snow, but it didn't slow down Trey Hendrickson or the rest of the Bengals defensive line. Buffalo's defensive front has to be looking at this and going, wow, we really let an opportunity go.
Man, it was such a fun back and forth game because, one of the things that kind of let the Bengals back into the game, the Chiefs come up with an incredible touchdown, Mahomes to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who, by the way, just went off in this game. The Marquez Valdes-Scantling game, 6 catches, 116 yards. Mahomes throws a laser beam for a touchdown to him. They go up 7. Bengals come back and don't score. And, the Chiefs have opportunities to put this game away. And Patrick Mahomes throws the ball backwards, just slips out of his hand, throws the ball backwards. The Bengals recover, and that puts them in position to get back on track and to score. They convert. By the way, this whole day, man, teams scoring with 4th down aggressiveness. Not to beat that drum too much, but our friend Nick Wright mentioned about, hey, we gotta highlight. You gotta highlight the wins, right? If you want people to stop saying take the points and why are you going for it on 4th down, you got to highlight the wins.
Yep. And
there was so many wins. The Chiefs scored a touchdown because they went for it on 4th and inches. There was a ton in the Eagles game, but the Bengals go for it on 4th and 6, just at the edge of field goal range, chuck it up to Jamar Chase for a 1st down conversion. That leads to a touchdown. There were so many aggressive 4th down calls in this game, in both games today, that directly led to touchdowns, that led to points that ended up being the difference in both games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the play as well for Kansas City's 4th down was incredible because it's 4th, and it was a long one. There's is it 4th and inches? Is it 4th? It was 4th and a serious 1 yard, more than a yard. 4th and a yard and a foot, maybe. And they get Mahomes moving on what was almost like a sprint right option type of play. Mm-hmm. There's nothing there. They've got it covered. And then, again, him and Kelsey just adjust on the fly. He throws a back shoulder corner, essentially, stops the corner route and sends him back inside. And at that point, there's no way. I think Jesse Bates was the DB, but there's no way he can adjust to that. And on what is a 4th and 1 call, they end up scoring a touchdown on a pretty deep strike. They made those plays in this game.
They did. They absolutely did.
I think both defenses did a really good job. All the talk I think has been about the offenses before the game. It's been if Burrow beats Mahomes, he's the best quarterback. It's Mahomes and his ankle. It's Kelsey. It's the offensive lines. Can they run the ball? Both of these defenses, I think, did really good jobs of slowing down both teams. Joe Burrow almost threw a pick on the first drive, right? He then ends up throwing an interception that gets negated because of a correct defensive pass interference call. He got there too early. But this entire game was just sort of small, tiny defensive plays either side of good or bad. You know what I mean? Even that defensive pass interference, it was the right call, but he flew in there so fast, and it kind of needed slow-mo to slow it down and go, oh, yeah, he was there early.
Yeah.
But he was right. That's a split-second play. And then the pass interference from Mike Hilton, was it, where he had the arm around the hip, and they're debating, is that enough of a turn to call it pass interference? The entire game, everything was just right on this razor's edge the whole way.
The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home? Planning to start a family? Wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. Coming to you live from Western and Southern Studio here in Cincinnati. It's going to be a sad city. Over here, it won't be lit up orange here during the next couple of weeks heading into the Super Bowl.
No, probably still tonight though.
Maybe
we're not going to go like the Empire State Building and throw it up red.
Is the Empire State Building going to go red for the Chiefs here?
Well, they went green for the Eagles.
Yeah, they lost a bet or something.
Was that what it was?
I think. I know somebody was theorizing that. I just want to echo your statements. I thought that the Chiefs defense, and both defenses were really good, I think. The Chiefs defense in particular, if you think about every big play that the Bengals had, Jamar Chase on 4th and 6, T. Higgins touchdown on 3rd and long, it's a lot of tight coverage, right?
Yeah.
The Chiefs did choose, right? If you go back through this, the trilogy initially of Bengals Chiefs, there are these man coverage plays that we talked about that Chiefs fans are still, we played man coverage on 3rd and 27. Yeah, well, Joe Burrow had to hit a absolute dime. They call it a dime because he had to hit this tiny spot, and he did it on 3rd and 27. It was a tight window throw. Then they started playing more zone. Burrow picked them apart. I don't know the exact breakdown in the game today, but there was definitely a lot more man coverage and just tight window throws that Burrow and the Bengals offense, along with, the pressure up front. I thought the Chiefs defense did a really nice job.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that stood out for this game is the Bengals could have been out of this early. I mean, they were getting their ass kicked for the first half of this game, really. And then all of a sudden they get one drive before halftime, and you're like, wow, they're only getting out of this down 7. And they could have been out of it, down even less than that. They had to settle. But
yeah, it was 6-0 with 2 field goals. They made 2 red zone stops to force field goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Kansas City was absolutely dominating in the first half, but that's not new in this Cincinnati-Kansas City dynamic. Those 3 games, the last championship game, they were down 14 or something at the half, 17, so down big. In one of the other games, they were down at the half as well by double digits. The other one, they were up at the half, but they were down at the end of the third quarter significantly as well. So the Bengals have been trailing against Kansas City in some pretty ugly spots, basically every one of these games, but they come back. That's, I think, the thing that Joe Burrow definitely exhibits is they're not bothered by being in a hole. They're fine. They know that they have that. That's where I think he has that Tom Brady ability of, that's all right. There's plenty of time left. We can come back from this. This is not, we've been causing this as much as the opposition. We just keep chipping away, and we get a couple more drives, and we're back in it. Particularly, I think, with the way their defense is playing. But that's exactly what happened. They got the drive before halftime. They got themselves together after halftime, and all of a sudden, this ends up getting back to being like an absolute knife edge.
That's why I think the Bengals coaching staff has done a good job, man. I think they deserve a lot of credit. And not so much whatever. I'm not even talking about the specific tactical stuff that we break down here all the time, but they bring it in big games, the Bengals. Zach Taylor, it sounded like he was livid for many reasons, not only the do-over on 3rd and 9, but blocks in the back on that punt return that set up the game-winning drive. I mean, those are game changers. When the team only has one timeout, those are absolute game changers. I thought this thing was going to overtime. I think we were robbed of overtime, to be honest, between maybe missed calls, but more specifically, it's tough to see the game end on a late hit out of bounds. Right call, refs didn't do anything wrong on that particular one, but it's tough to see it end that way. But you're right. I think Burrow, he is cool under pressure, man. Just like Mahomes is cool under pressure, right? I mean,
I say that despite him throwing, multiple interceptions.
Yeah, I think that, but like even those interceptions, there's a cross between like the whole timeline's like, oh, that's as good as a punt. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, a conversion on 3rd and 3 is also better than a punt, right? Yes. But, like the second one that he threw to T. Higgins, it's a throw up there to let him go make a play that shouldn't have been picked. It was just, gets tipped away and bounces up for a pick. It's an aggressive play call. I mean, that's part of, I believe, why people rally around Joe Burrow. He had a great scramble. They converted the 3rd and long just before he got sacked on that last drive. But, the Bengals believe that they can win all these games. There's something to that, just like the Chiefs believe, right? After Mahomes has, if we look back at that game and say he throws the ball backwards, basically, unprompted, fumble, you start looking at last year's AFC Championship in the second half where he's fumbling and taking sacks and, making uncharacteristic plays as they blew the lead. They didn't completely implode this time. It was one random play. Mahomes bounces back. And then on top of that, the Chiefs had all of their receivers hurt too. Like the totality of what the Chiefs were dealing with the offense, with Mecole Hardman and Kadarius Toney, Juju Smith-Schuster, all of those guys hurt. Travis Kelce was a kind of a game time decision. He looked like he's still got those back spasms, and Mahomes has the ankle, and didn't matter. Just greatness coming through, and when they needed it.
I mean, when you kind of tot up the totality of what they were dealing with from an injury perspective, just this game, I mean, Kelce was supposedly a game time decision, which, I mean, if you listen to him, he was like, I was always playing, but they needed to see me warm up before they were going to okay it. So whatever. But all of a sudden, it's like Kelce might not play in this game. Mahomes, we know, was dealing with the ankle, which was a major thing. Kadarius Toney, he catches one pass after almost catching a touchdown. It coming out on review, coming out once they saw it. Basically tries to juke and then ends up popping an ankle or something, so he's done. Juju goes down with a knee injury. Like they were completely out of receivers by the end of this game. They had like two guys who were running multiple tight end sets as well. The Bengals dealt with their own injuries, but that's a lot to be missing from this offense and for it still to function and be okay.
Yeah, having Marquez Valdez-Scantling, a couple big plays in there from him, including the touchdown. I mean, he was even the guy Mahomes was throwing to, against the blitz.
Yeah.
And, the question coming in was, could the Bengals get pressure on Mahomes? And early on, they didn't really. They did try to blitz and got to him a little bit. Again, I don't know the exact numbers right away till we review the game. But there were definitely times, too, where it felt like the Chiefs' offensive line, like you mentioned the play where Mahomes tweaked the ankle a little bit. It's almost like the Chiefs are like, what? Patrick's hurt? Let's step up our game. And all of a sudden, the pockets are just better. And they just – I could have been wrong.
Really?
Believe it or not. On the Chiefs building their offensive line. And that being the strategy going forward.
You hated that.
I did, because I thought that they would get to a situation like this where the on-paper group of playmakers wasn't good enough. And I may have been wrong on that, because I think the line has given them a little bit more flexibility where they can run the ball. I mean, they couldn't run today. It was tough to run on DJ Reader and company. But the line stepped up in games where Mahomes didn't have his mobility and, gave him gave him that little extra time to get this second-class group of receivers basically open.
Yeah, they didn't have much rushing success, but Pacheco made a bunch of big plays, usually after the catch. But he got given the ball a bunch of times where it looked like he had nowhere to go, and that dude just runs differently to other running backs. He runs. I think I've said this before in the podcast, but when you play at a really lower level, you can see the guys that just play with a different level of physicality and intensity. He does that in the NFL. He runs with a level of violence and reckless abandon that most other running backs don't have. And it pays off. There are plays where he hits a guy, and you're like, that play should be over right here. And just through sheer determination and refusal to go down, he just keeps fighting through it and ends up getting yards after contact and broken tackles and first downs where they shouldn't exist.
Are you ready for the biggest Sunday in sports, Sam?
Sure.
DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 57. They get all the Super Bowl action you need because new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all customers can get on the Super Bowl 57 excitement with DraftKings Happy Hour Super Boosts. Wow, this is great. Check out check the DraftKings Sportsbook app every day from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Okay, check it every day, 6 to 9 Eastern, to see what prop bet will be boosted. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PFF. New customers can bet $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code PFF. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void in Ohio. See show notes for details. You're voided here in Ohio. What else about this game just stood out to you? I love the back and forth battle. It's quite the rivalry. I mean, there's a point in there where I was talking about Cincinnati from a long-term perspective. They chuck it up to Higgins. Burrow chucks it up to Higgins on 3rd and long. And I'm just thinking, how long do the Bengals want to just keep that trio together? Because when you talk about competing with the Chiefs and the Bills, right? Let's not forget the Bills just because they lost last week, right? They're still going to be up there. How long do you want to keep Burrow, Chase, and Higgins together? And can you legitimately put half your salary cap into 3 players and build around it? It's going to be tough to do because Higgins is going to command wide receiver 1 money. So, just what I was thinking during the game. Because that's why Burrow's so cool too, man. He knows he's got these dudes that he can throw it to when they need to.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a thing that they have to reckon with pretty soon. T. Higgins had that thing of being talked about as a number 1 receiver, but there was always the question of how much of it was being manufactured by having Jamar Chase on the other side. Then we got to see what it looked like when Jamar Chase wasn't there for a few games, and it looked exactly like everybody had been saying. Like, he is a number 1 caliber guy, and then when you put Chase back in the lineup, it just works even better because Chase is still the guy getting the double teams and the extra attention, which only frees up T. Higgins to generally be one-on-one as much as possible. So collectively, it is a fantastic trio. And then when you have a guy like Tyler Boyd in the slot as well, it's even better. But at some point, that starts to cost a lot of money because once those guys get onto that second contract, it is tying down a ton of cash into those players. That being said, if you're going to start off, like if you started from scratch, a roster with all of the cap space and 0 money and 0 players, you could argue that the first 3 players you'd want to tie down are your quarterback, your number 1 receiver, and maybe your number 2 receiver if he's that good. Like if he's a 1A, that might be where you want to throw the 3 biggest contracts that you have, all things being equal.
Yeah, then the juggling of the rest of the roster after that, if you have Burrow locked up long term, you can move money around. I mean, if you have all of them locked up, you can move money around and kind of make it work.
But this is what the Chiefs have been dealing with already. This is what the Bills are dealing with now that they've paid Josh Allen. Like at some point, this is just the reality of it, is once the quarterback in particular is on that second contract, you can't have everything. You're going to have to juggle and make sacrifices somewhere and, cut guys that you would rather keep, but you have to figure out somewhere to give the money in addition to the quarterback.
That's why the Chiefs, this was supposed to be their transition year and they were supposed to be better next year. Right. Why they gave up Tyreek Hill to maybe take a step back so that they could say, hey, next year with Trent McDuffie and Sky Moore and George Karlaftis all getting better and some of the other players that we got. But here they are in the Super Bowl. And Travis Kelce, I don't know if we're going to try to play that clip or whatever.
We have to, because this is the most important outcome of this game, is that the team with more bulletin board material won the game.
I was right, man. This is the one time I was right all year. I said the team with the most chips on the shoulder, the team with more bulletin board material. And by the end of the week, the Chiefs had a bigger bulletin board, man.
So at Burrowhead Stadium, what happened? Well, Travis Kelce can tell you, assuming we have this clip.
Okay, I didn't. We couldn't hear it, but it sounded like he combined. I think he started with a woo.
Yeah.
And he ended with the rock. With Jabroni. I think he called the mayor Jabroni or something.
But I think you could see.
So you combined two of the greatest wrestling promos of all time. You started with Ric Flair and finished with The Rock. That is top notch by Travis Kelce.
Yes, and also the quote, "Burrowhead my ass" should probably wind up in a T-shirt somewhere.
I'm sure that's going to be a T-shirt. We don't make T-shirts anymore, but
it's true. But they sort of vindicated that, right? They clearly that did, I think, piss the Chiefs off during the course of the week. There was plenty of bulletin board material, and they end up getting the win, and now they can rub it in all the way through the week.
It was just a great back and forth game, though, buddy. I mean, the Chiefs came out firing, right? I mean, we mentioned that first quarter. The game wasn't won in the first quarter, but we see all those key plays in the fourth quarter. If the Chiefs don't get up to that early lead, 13-3, dominating, go for that fourth down where Mahomes rolls out and finds Kelce, which was just a great play, right? Kelce runs a corner route and Mahomes adjusts off of it. We've seen them try to run that play before, basically like back shouldering a corner. And that was the play. That was the play where they used to get Tyreek Hill open all the time, right? Yeah. You just roll him out, and you cannot stop Tyreek Hill sprinting to the flat. It's impossible. I mean, those are just showing all the different ways that the Chiefs are able to evolve offensively. So we'll have plenty to talk about with the Chiefs-Eagles game, but it gives 2 more weeks for Mahomes to heal. I mean, I don't know if we'll see any side effects with the injury. I don't think he got hurt that much. He does have that. He does limp a lot during games.
It's not going to be worse than it was in this game.
It shouldn't be. So we'll have the Chiefs. We'll see what happens with all their receivers, but they'll be closer to full strength. I think Jalen Hurts, he's been hurt and banged up, a little bit off. Hopefully he's at full strength and we get a really good game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game should be pretty spectacular. The other thing that was interesting in this one is, so as much as we gave Kansas City credit for going for it on 4th and 1 earlier in the game, getting a touchdown off it, they also punted the ball on 4th and 8, 2.5 minutes left, which felt like that might be the last time they would touch the ball. They punted it away. Now, look, 4th and 8 is not exactly the easiest thing in the world to convert. You're in a tough spot at that point anyway, right? And that was the Bengals had a decision on the penalty, right? They could accept it and put them at 3rd and 22 or something.
There was a holding penalty. So it was 3rd and 12 or whatever it was. And Mahomes flips it, almost gets sacked. He flips it for a 4-yard gain.
Yeah.
So the Bengals, with 2.5 minutes left, had to choose between 4th and 8, just out of field goal range.
Right.
Or 3rd and 22.
Yes.
And they initially took the 3rd and 22. And it didn't seem crazy to say, okay, 3rd and 22, you give up 10 or something on 3rd and 22, and you're still in a better spot, ultimately. But Zach Taylor did not want to take that chance. That's what I'm saying. I think he's making the right moves, right? He was saying, I think they're going to punt on 4th and 8. If they go for it, they go for it. I'll give them that option. I think they're going to punt on 4th and 8. We get the ball in Joe Burrow's hands, full field to go. Let's trust them and go. They got one first down and then got sacked and had to punt it back. But yeah, there was a chance. That was it for the Chiefs. And that would have been that would have been like the Andy Reid game management thing that comes up where it's like Andy always makes one of these big mistakes. And he made a couple, challenge mistakes and stuff in this.
And it would have been a 54-yard field goal, I think, which is, we're in a world of, now look, it's outside. It's
Jay Feely was on the sideline.
Back to Arrowhead Stadium now, in the cold.
Jay Feely was on the sideline saying that's out of his, they had Harrison Butker's range.
Uh-huh. I'm just saying a 54-yard field goal these days is pretty, reasonably conservative. Like, there's plenty of kickers out here attempting 60-plus yarders on a regular basis. Now, they're not doing it in January in Arrowhead Stadium necessarily, but if I had a kicker and he couldn't make 54 for distance, I wouldn't be that thrilled, So anyway, they like to go. They punted away on 4th and 8 rather than attempt to go for it. But it did feel like that might be the last time the Chiefs offense sees the football. Like 2.5 minutes, Joe Burrow, late in the game, Tom Brady type of magic. This is what he's been doing. And they started off that drive, they convert on a big 3rd and 16. And then Chris Jones took over.
Yeah, that was it. I think don't have the game film, obviously, just yet. It looked like the Chiefs were doing what they could to just give T. Higgins and Jamar Chase the focus. Because like the second down play was to Trent Irwin in one-on-one coverage, not creating any separation. They get to 3rd and long. And like I said, Chris Jones, you move him out wide against Hakeem Adeniji, had been rushing Jones from the interior, basically dominating Max Sharping for much of the game, the starting guard. This time you move him out to right tackle, and he gets it. Chris Jones didn't have any playoff sacks until today. I didn't know that. I mean, we know he's had games. Super Bowl a couple years ago, I think he had like 10 pressures. Like,
well, they've been to 5 straight AFC Championship games.
Yeah,
like,
they play a lot of games.
He's played in quite a lot of playoff games.
But Burrow broke free from a Chris Jones sack or two last year. But we know he's had games with like 9 and 10 pressures, and then Frank Clark's the cleanup guy all the time. And Frank Clark's like legendary playoff sack artist or whatever. But Chris Jones has always been the most disruptive player on that team, and he was again.
Just an update for your earlier question. The Empire State Building has in fact lit up in Chiefs colors. So the Eagles only got like 3 hours worth of
so it's like an American building, not a...
Well, it's just red now.
So the Empire State Building is the Rob Lowe of
pretty much
of buildings.
Yeah.
Just
whatever one.
It's rooting for the Shield.
Right.
Just here for the Shield. Just wearing my Shield hat.
Just like the officials.
It should just wear red, white, and blue for America and the Shield.
Yeah.
That's what it should be lit up as. I thought they just had the Jets colors fired up. I'm like, here you go, Eagles. We got your
probably
green and white. Yeah. So Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. They won.
Well, certainly, apparently now you can make the argument that he's better than Joe Burrow. However difficult it might have been to make had they lost this game. You know, if this coin flip of a game had gone the other way and Burrow had won, it was impossible to make the argument that Mahomes is better, even though he played the entire game with his hobbled ankle and blah, blah, blah. But now that he's won because somebody shoved him in the back going out of bounds, we can make the argument that he is the better quarterback. Again.
One of the rare games where the team with more rushing yards actually lost as well.
Wow.
Bengals finished with 71 rushing yards, including 30 from Burrow, mostly all on scrambles, including a really nice.
Well, you got to be over 100. I mean, if you don't even get to 100 rushing
yards.
Well,
that's why the Bengals couldn't win.
It doesn't mean anything.
That's why they couldn't win. So yeah, the Bengals, look, there were injuries on both sides. We talked about the Chiefs getting depleted. The Bengals losing Alex Kappa, Lyle Collins. I mean, just losing 3 out of their 5 starters. Didn't notice it last week against Buffalo, but certainly did.
How much, just as an over-under, how much drink do you think has been involved in the chat? Some of these questions that are being fired at us. There's one guy in there particularly who I would hope, for his own sake, is hammered out of his gourd at this point. Because if you're of the persuasion that cuss words and whatnot are not of your liking, I would click the fast forward 30-second button for here, but I will read you this person's message. Quote, yeah, how the fuck do these motherless pieces of shit not mention the blatantly missed holding call on a Mahomes run? End quote.
That's a good point. It's a good question.
I'm just over under how many drinks you think that person has had. I don't know if it's a guy. I can't make out his
at least 11 drinks.
11. Over. Tyler
over
says.
11 billion.
Yeah.
What are these vanilla ESPN type questions? Oh, they don't like your questions in the chat here, Sam.
My question? I was just asking how much drink you had.
Tyler. They don't like Tyler's questions.
According to him, or according to this person, male or female, I can't tell. He's not drunk. He doesn't drink.
Well,
he, she, it, whatever.
It's just off, just excited or upset. Yeah, I didn't actually see the holding call. I saw the late hit. I didn't see the holding, but I saw Pete Prisco tweeting about it. He would never lie. He said it was a hold. It should have been offsetting. That would have put us at a do-over.
A do-over again.
Which,
yeah,
we do sometimes.
We do apparently now, yeah.
It is brutal when the game's so close, and that's what it comes down to at the end.
Yeah, but there were some weird officiating calls in this game. Like, obviously, the do-over is the most egregious thing. But they actually got a lot right. I mean, the pass interference for the Burrow interception, I think, was legit. You needed replay really to slow it down and see, but that was absolutely legit. I think the one on Hilton was legit as well. Like, they were debating how much of a turn you needed to see, but you can see that it's twisting, I think, MVS around. Like, he can't contort to the left to catch the ball because there's a hand on his right hip that's pulling him in the opposite direction. I think that's pass interference. The play to Eli Apple off the back of that do-over that bailed them out. They, off the back of the do-over, they sack Mahomes, but it doesn't count because Eli Apple had his hands all over the receiver. That was legit as well. Like, there were a lot of good calls.
You just didn't think it was going to happen after they stopped him on 3rd and 9, right? We talked about makeup calls, and it's like, maybe we let that little tug go on this 3rd and 9 that we just screwed them over on. Anyway.
But I think you can absolutely... I don't know that this was the worst officiated game in the world, particularly given the standards set by the NFL.
Impressed with Mahomes down the stretch again. He had a couple bad plays in there. One was a turnover, had a dropped interception, but then in crunch time, running for the first down. I mean, it was like he was just saving, the touchdown to Valdez-Scantling, absolute laser beam, right? It was like he just knew how to take it easy, take what was there. But when he needed to step up, and we mentioned this on the pregame show, just like become a star, right? Just be a star for a couple plays. He did it on a couple throws, and he did it on that 3rd and 4 scramble that ended up becoming the late hit that led to the game-winning touchdown. So congrats to the Chiefs and Chiefs fans.